So Cody Rhodes, who was basically, I would say, one of the founding fathers of the AEW, if not the founding father, now leaving AEW, and it seems like he's coming back to WWE. This is an earth-shattering wrestling week. Something that I think a lot of people didn't expect, but we'll explain why we're not like totally surprised. But anyway, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm surprised. It's all surprising in its way. I mean, I guess it deserves a little bit of background, which is that, I mean, Cody left WWE several years ago, basically just saying he wanted to go walk the earth and explore what wrestling was like outside of WWE. His father, obviously the legendary Dusty Rhodes, made his name and career outside of WWE and wanted to, and Cody, I think, felt a little bit of that call to follow along. And he didn't, there were a number of quote unquote founders of AEW. Obviously, Tony Khan is the owner and creative force behind it and the money behind it and everything else. But Cody and some wrestlers, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, they were all by name at least executive vice presidents when the company started. But it was Cody leaving WWE, going wrestling the Indies and in Japan and Ring of Honor, and sort of teaming up there with Omega and the Young Bucks that sort of made wrestling outside of WWE a reality in a way. They had a big pay-per-view show before AEW was a thing that really made it possible financially for everything to take place. Now, Tony Khan could have started his own company and figured this out without Cody Rhodes potentially, but sort of spiritually, Cody Rhodes is the founder of this movement in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and you have AEW, and we talked about this the last time we were on talk about AEW versus WWE, about AEW, the first one since ECW that was able to, from a ground roots way, challenge the WWE at least a little bit, right? ECW challenged them, and like with the Attitude Era and how violent it was, and they started tapping into something that WWE was like, oh shit, and they started copying it. AEW was even a bigger challenger. AEW tapped into this weird culture war we have in wrestling, where we have the WWE style, the big guys, the old school matches, the Hulk Hogan Ultimate Warrior kind of blueprint. And then there's that separate side, which is like the Dave Meltzer 5-star matches in the newsletter, and people who revere the Steamboat Savage match from WrestleMania 3 and that sort of DNA, which Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks were kind of at the forefront of. And those were the guys that the WWE over and over again either had and didn't push correctly or just ignored completely. And AEW is like, we're going to build our whole wrestling thing around this, around good matches, good storytelling. We're not going to have 100 people on our roster. We're going to build around, we're going to pick 7 to 10 guys. We're going to have young guys. We're going to try to do up and coming people. And it worked. But now the guy who was the spearhead of it was leaving.
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, since the last time we talked, the biggest change is that AEW is 1,000,000% legit in terms of competition to WWE. Now, listen, they're not going to have, WWE has a lot of institutional advantages in terms of everything from ratings to money to everything. Yeah. But AEW is, I mean, if you go on any forum, if you go on Twitter, you go on Reddit, I mean, AEW has as much traction as WWE in terms of, people chattering about wrestling, and it's a real legitimate thing. Now, AEW did go kind of fill in this space that the WWE had sort of abandoned over the years. I mean, it must be said that some of their biggest draws in their brief existence are people like Jon Moxley, formerly Dean Ambrose, obviously CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, Chris Jericho, people that made their names in WWE and elsewhere. But that's not a sign of AEW sort of like caving to the establishment or anything like that. I mean, there wasn't a wrestling world before, I mean, outside of WWE really before AEW in the United States, at least. And that's where the big stars are going to come from. And they get a lot of eyeballs on the screen, and CM Punk talking into a microphone would be a biggest draw for WWE as it is for AEW. I mean, but they offer something different, and the competition has been really, really evident. Cody Rhodes, for a lot of different reasons, never really had that same top tier feel in AEW. I think there's some backstage reasons for that. There's a lot of different stuff going on, but he was a little bit separate in AEW. And I think that there was some tension or whatever. And for a lot of reasons, he was willing to walk at the end of his deal. And it seems like, well, that's definitely what's happened. And it seems like he's headed for WWE, where, I mean, we can talk about it. There's for about a million different reasons he could conceivably be walking in as a made man.
It's the first kind of major wow moment the WWE's had with a signing since when?
Well,
we're going back years.
Probably well, yeah. I mean, AJ Styles, when he debuted in the Royal Rumble, was a big kind of, holy shit moment. But that wasn't,
that was like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah. And again, that wasn't like some contract heist or anything. There was no forbidden door opening or glass shattering when that happened. I mean, in the Monday Night Wars era, I guess what would be the parallel? Chris Jericho coming over, but even Jericho was a guy who WWE saw a lot of promise in and elevated him a little bit in the transition.
Jericho's my favorite because it was the greatest setup and then entrance, and it tapped into this really cool thing that was happening with wrestling back then, where it was like the wrestling fans kind of learning rumors of stuff on the internet, anticipating people going to the stands, hoping something might happen. And in that case, it was like Jericho might show up tonight, and then it fucking happened. They crushed the entrance, and it's like one of the best 2 minutes on YouTube. It really is. It's great.
It's
I guess like
Goldberg, it's really amazing.
Goldberg coming back, maybe.
Well, yeah, but there was ever any surprise with that. I mean, if you're plugged in at all, you knew that Goldberg pretty much every time you kind of expected Goldberg, and he wasn't. I mean, Goldberg, it has a lot of upside for WWE as evidenced by the fact that he's still wrestling into his 50s, but like he's not the sort of dude who's just going to go wrestle in, Japan on the regular. He's not a wrestling lifer. He's a big paycheck guy. He's a big main event guy, and it's a little bit it's a different vibe. Now, Cody Rhodes, it remains to be seen if he shows up in WWE whether he's going to be a day in, day out performer, if he's going to negotiate a more of a part-time contract. I mean, really, there's no way to know, but he definitely represents a lot to WWE. I mean, right off the bat that I was saying, I jumped in the MacMania podcast on the Ringer Wrestling show earlier today, and I said, there's rumors that Stone Cold Steve Austin might make an in-ring return at WrestleMania this year. Now, who knows if that's true? Who knows? I mean, he's obviously getting up there in years. He was an injury. I mean, he retired because of injury. A lot of people have been making comebacks with all these fancy new medicines they have these days. But I was asking, how much do you think Vince would pay to bring Stone Cold Steve Austin back for WrestleMania to sell a bunch of tickets? I mean, like, if you told me $5 million, I wouldn't be shocked, right? If you told me $10 million, I would say, check your math, but I still might not be shocked. To have an executive vice president of AEW come back with the perception that he thought the grass would be greener and he was wrong. That's probably worth about the same amount to Vince McMahon and the WWE sort of collective ego at this point, right? So,
it hurts the AEW too. And AEW might have been tailing off a tiny bit just because I think they made the classic mistake of they just started adding too many people. And they kind of got away a little bit from what their blueprint was, is we're going to push X amount of people. That I think they have a lot of people on the roster now, but
they've done a pretty good job of balancing that out. I mean, as far as that problem goes, they've done a good job of sort of solving it, which is just to not have their biggest people on TV every week, wrestling week in and week out, but you're right.
Smart.
I mean, I mean, it's like UFC, or like boxing, whatever. Like, these guys don't fight every Monday night, So, I mean, I don't know if they've lost their way. I think that they've sort of found a sort of temporary ceiling, and they'll probably blow past it at some point in the not too distant future, because that's how these things tend to go. But yeah, I mean, I think, Cody, I think it's safe to say that, if it was a money issue, whatever else, Cody probably means more to WWE at this moment in time than he did to AEW. And so in that sense, it makes some amount of sense. Cody Rhodes was also doing some extracurricular stuff for Warner Media. He was one of the judges on the Go Big show, and he had a reality show over there and stuff. I mean, I think that's a little bit beside the point. I'm not sure that Turner is going to have that much trouble filling those spots, and I'm not sure that if the money's good enough at WWE, the Rhodes family really cares that much. But I think that in the big picture, the biggest thing about it is, for wrestling fans like you, like me, like everybody else, it's exciting that people are starting to go back and forth, not just one direction, because I mean, and it's not just like a WWE homer side of me either. What was cool about the Monday Night Wars is that you never knew. Like, people would be going in different directions, and you would know. And people like Jericho was more meaningful to WWE than he had been to WCW. The Radicals, same thing. You know, Eddie Guerrero coming over was immediately more meaningful in WWE.
Yep.
And vice versa too, right? I mean, you know, most of the guys that have signed with AEW from WWE are having the time of their lives over there, you know, or getting able to do stuff that they wish they could do at WWE. So it's really interesting if it ends up working both ways.
Do you think at least a piece of this was Tony Khan's been very out there with a lot of I, me stuff with the success of the AEW the last few years. And I was watching it from afar going, I'm interested to see how that goes for him, with him trying to become a character who's grabbing a lot of the I'm the reason this is going well. And maybe I'm overthinking it, but Cody jumping back to WWE makes me think, like, could that have been Tony Khan related, where he's like, look, this fucking guy, now he's taking credit for everything.
I mean, I think that there's probably a dollar figure that can make anything like that go away, right? But
you're right.
So, I mean, so any number of things could have been at play. But yeah, I mean, I think that when AEW started, it did seem like it was this sort of, from an outsider's perspective, this consortium between these like 4 or 5 wrestlers who, you know, really had a lot of ideas and a lot of vision and everything, and Tony Khan, who also
just wanted to put him in position to succeed.
Yeah, and I think that as it's gone on, yeah, Tony Khan has been more central. Now, he's not an on-screen character like Vince McMahon is or Eric Bischoff was. I'm not sure that he. Well, who knows? We'll see if he wants to be. It seems like he would be if he wanted to. He could already be doing it. But certainly in the, you know, off screen, yeah, he's become the central character in AEW. The press release that they released today, they put out today saying, you know, fond farewell to Cody and Brandy Rhodes. Listed his credit as CEO, president, general manager, and head of creative. All Elite Wrestling, right? That's a lot of titles. I mean, I will say this. If it does seem like he is the head of creative, that he's the main story writer, the main, you know, creative.
That was not how we started.
No, it's not how we started. But if that's true, then he deserves all this credit. Give him 20 more titles, because they've been telling stories that fans have been justifiably clamoring for, you know, from WWE for a long time. They treat their audience like they're paying attention and like they're smart, and give them lots and lots. Give Tony Khan lots and lots of credit for that. But yeah, if the plan was this is going to be a big, like, you know, co-op, like a pro wrestling co-op where we all get our vote and we all get our ideas and we all get an opportunity to watch them flourish.
That's over.
You know, you open your eyes 18 months later and there's just one person in charge. Whether or not it's successful, sure, there's going to be some people that would rather do something else.
Well, and then on the flip side, I think the WWE, the biggest issue that, I mean, they've had a bunch of issues the last couple of years. The botching the NXT brand, I think, I still don't totally get that. And not using NXT as like to build these young stars that then come in and get pushed in WWE, and they just don't. And I'm just watching it through my son, who now is too cool for wrestling, but he'll be back at like age 19, I feel like. But, you know, like somebody like Ricochet, who's like, I can't wait till Ricochet goes in and just completely kicks ass in WWE. And then he comes in and he's just treated like another guy, you know? And so you have that piece. But then the real thing that I think I've struggled with was just like, they haven't catered to the people who just love, in a big card, just give me like 2 really good wrestling matches. Give me 2 old school matches with a lot of twists and turns. And I think that's where AEW really took their lunch the last couple of years. AEW was like, this is all we want to give you. WWE was still in this, oh my God, Brock Lesnar, now he's in the Royal Rumble. Now he's throwing guys around. And it's just like these bigger than life kind of Marvel characters, which seems like that's what Vince wants at this point. And I just disagree. I think you can have both.
Well, yeah. With 5 hours of network broadcasting every week and, you know, all this Peacock time beside, yes, you can have both. You know, I mean, I was watching Raw last night with my wife, and the 24/7 title segment came through, which is basically just a running comedy bit that goes through Monday Night Raw. And she was laughing and she was like, don't you like this? And I was like, you know what? As like a way to fill time on a 3-hour show, yes, it's totally great. You know, I wouldn't necessarily book this into my like 1-hour broadcast, but yeah, it fits. They have time to do everything. They could do it. And the idea that everything has to be sort of the same. Yeah, you're right. It's ridiculous with all the time they have. When you look back, I know that like, you know, the institution of WWE does not care about Savage Steamboat even a fraction of the amount they care about Hogan Andre, you know, from WrestleMania 3.
Right.
I think there's a little bit of shoulder shrugging in some quarters up there where they're just like, yeah, it was good, but why are people keep asking me about this? The point is, you can still put that on the card. You can still give that match 30 minutes and on a pay-per-view that otherwise would have kind of gotten an eye roll out of most fans. At least they'll be saying, man, you know, Edge, AJ Styles, 28 minutes. That was the greatest match I've seen this month. Like, that was like a big deal. They have the ability to do that. And that, like, they can relinquish some of the ground to AEW, right? They can say, we'll let you have the smaller guys. We'll let you have like the crazy 5-star work rate guys. You know, we'll let you have the bloody matches, like whatever. But you can't just relinquish good matches, right? You can't just relinquish, like, we're going to have good professional wrestling on our professional wrestling program, because they can do it. You know, it's right there. And to say they've given that to AEW, I mean, on Dynamite last week, they had a title match between Hangman Page and Lance Archer that was, everybody in the world knew that Hangman Page was going to win. It was on broadcast television, not a major show. And it was one of the best matches I've seen in forever. They can make a good match out of thin air, and they give it time and the tools to really succeed as a good match. And that's, WWE doesn't have to copy a model. They just have to do what they do. You know, it's wrestling. Just like let the wrestlers go out there and succeed.
Well, they still certainly have enough hours to be able to do that.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the biggest issue with WWE, just from a following it standpoint, is just there's too much. You know, and they knew that when they took the Fox money and they created the Friday show, but they, you know, and I think that really hurt NXT. I just think at some point they had too much product. All right, before we go, let's do it. I think the world is in good hands right now. Kyle, you might have to turn the camera on.
Ooh.
Let's book Cody Rhodes' first 2 months in WWE. Let's figure out his gimmick.
Ooh.
Let's figure out the conceit.
All right.
Let's figure out what we want to do with him, because we could go in two directions here. We can either go in the direction of, I'm better than everybody here. I left, I proved myself, and now I'm coming back, and I was too good for this place to begin with, where he's just arrogant. He goes villain side, right? Just immediately, like, I'm better than all of you. I just proved it. The only thing that's going to keep me back would be the same politics that made me left in the first place. He goes that route.
Yep.
We could also go I'm back, but do I trust him? Is he a mole from the AEW? Does he really want to be? We could go that whole route. Or we go hey, the WWE used to care about great matches, and I'm just here, I'll wrestle anybody. And we just, like, he basically plants his flag in I am now, all the good matches roll through me, and we are going to reshape this. So of those three directions, and maybe there's one I left out, which one would you vote for?
Well, I'll take him in reverse order. I mean, Cody Rhodes is a really, really good wrestler. He's more of a guy that is really good with it. If his dance partner is going to get is excellent, then they can have a 5-star match. But Cody isn't. Cody has not, traditionally been the sort of guy that's going to get a 5-star match out of a wrestling a broom or whatever.
Right. He needs a dance partner.
Great. But he's really great for the WWE style, which I think actually raises the bar a little bit while he's in WWE. For your second idea, there's probably nothing that would make me happier and make fans freak out more than if he showed up in like a Jacksonville Jaguars t-shirt and was just like, they kept saying like, he's up here from Florida. What does he do? Like, he's the new outsider, but he's come from AEW. That would be fun. I think that the way to go is probably number one. I think that if you take the Jericho example, the thing that made Jericho work, the thing that really paved the way for him to be champion in WWE and to have the career that he did, is that they put him face to face, well, metaphorically, with The Rock the moment he debuted, right? Was just like, we're going to put you opposite our number one guy. Yeah. And it didn't have to be a match, but it was putting them next to each other and saying, these guys are on equal footing. I think if it were me, I don't know Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar are sort of cordoned off doing their own thing. But if it were up to me, well, no, they don't have to be. But if that's set for WrestleMania, I can deal with that. If it were up to me, I would have Cody Rhodes come out and introduce and interrupt Vince McMahon, or better yet, say, interrupt Triple H. We haven't seen him in a while. I don't think Triple H is going to get in the ring, but Cody and Triple H have this sort of ambiguous rivalry as the two guys who are steering different ships at the same time. If Vince or Triple H were out there on the microphone, Cody Rhodes comes back and he's just like, I am the heir to pro wrestling, not you guys. My dad was was a more important wrestler than either of your whatever. I mean,
my dad forgot
really cool.
more about wrestling than you ever knew.
Yes. And the fans would cheer him.
Sorry,
and then they
so here's what we should do. No, here I have it. Comes out, interrupts Vince McMahon. Comes in, wearing the Jacksonville Jaguars Lawrence jersey. So immediately laying the smackdown. Goes in, grabs the mic from Vince, and was like, I'm the best right now. I want to wrestle your best guy tonight. Reigns comes out, wrestles Reigns, beats him. And now Lesnar Rhodes is on. For WrestleMania.
For Reigns Rhodes? Yeah. Well, I mean, Lesnar Rhodes. Yeah. Okay. You could do it that way. I mean,
I think he takes it from Reigns.
Yeah.
He takes the title from him. Just wins it right away. In the span of 15 minutes, it's like, holy shit, this guy just won the WWE title. And now it's like Lesnar has to go against him in WrestleMania. And now it's like, is this guy staging a full coup d'etat of WWE in 5 minutes? I would be in on that.
I think the practical worry there is that the worst thing you can be in pro wrestling, or at least in WWE, is to look like you're sort of a given.
You're the second,
to look like you're
second tier, whatever. Yeah.
Well, no, just to look like that Vince McMahon is like co-signed. Vince McMahon is going to make you the main guy no matter what the fans say. You got to give the fans some input. So I would just let him get out there, get some cheers, shit talking McMahon, and then you can do anything. I mean, on Saturdays the Elimination Chamber, and in that match, I mean they're competing for the title, for the WWE title. Roman Reigns holds the Universal title, and he's going to fight Brock Lesnar. But Brock Lesnar is also in the Elimination Chamber, so a lot of people are thinking Brock Lesnar is going to win, and it's going to be title versus title at WrestleMania, and but they could have someone like Seth Rollins win in the Elimination Chamber and let Seth be the WWE guy that Cody Rhodes comes and picks a fight with, and have that be the sort of night one main event for
that. By the way, that would be an awesome match.
It would be a great match. And they have, remember, WrestleMania is 2 nights. It's 2 nights. And WWE doesn't on paper have, like, it's not like they might have 2 main events. They don't have like 4 or 5 main events they're shuffling around between these 2 shows, right? I mean, they got Ronda Rousey. They got whatever Becky Lynch is going to do. I mean, that's a big thing. If they can get Austin back, that's a huge draw. But, I mean, they do need to spread it out a little bit. And
I just figured out what they were going to do.
What?
As you were talking. God damn it. This is what they're going to do. And after I tell you, you're going to be like, oh my God, that's what they're going to do.
Okay. Let me know.
Comes in the way you set it up. Immediately goes after Randy Orton and was like, you know what? I was here. Randy was here. 2 son of wrestling legends. And one guy got all the breaks. He sucked up to all the right people. He kissed all kinds of ass. And I tried to do things the old-fashioned way. I tried to earn my chances. I tried to just do good wrestler, good storytelling. And I couldn't compete with this other guy in all the ways he went around behind the scenes, kissing whatever ass it took. And now he's still there. I had to leave. And now I'm here to take his territory because it was bullshit that he took it from me in the first place. Randy Orton took my spot. Everything he achieved should have been mine. Does that whole thing. Are you in on that one?
Yeah, well, he worked with Randy Orton as part of Legacy for a little while. He was like a Randy Orton too.
They're kind of in the same draft class around there.
But I agree. I mean, that I think that's the right angle. I mean, he's here to take it all back, and I think
declare war on somebody coming out of the gate.
Yeah, you can work in a lot of the sort of rumored history between Dusty Rhodes and Vince McMahon. You could, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff there, and I mean, I think Vince has always probably had a soft spot in his heart for Cody Rhodes, despite the public perception. Vince really did have a soft spot in his heart for Dusty Rhodes, and Cody is, it checks a lot of boxes for the sort of wrestler that Vince McMahon wants. You know, I mean, he's legacy. He's also like he's like an actor and like
handsome,
like whatever
guy.
He has the look,
good at interviews.
Yeah, and the one, I don't know if Vince ever saw him as a main eventer, but now he's walking back in as one. You know, I mean, there's really no, if whatever contract he's going to sign puts him in the class of the sort of elite, no pun intended, WWE guys. He's probably going to work more dates than Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
But, Vince, Cody Rhodes might be wrestling for the 24/7 title in a month, for all we know. Vince, they might not treat him very well, but generally they have a pretty good track record with their sort of elite tier, part-time talent. And Cody Rhodes is going to walk in the door being one of those guys if he wants to be, So the thing that WWE needs more than anything in the world is more stars, like more, I mean, I was arguing with somebody before about whether or not Cody Rhodes is a bigger star than Seth Rollins. And I think that sort of proves the point. Like, I don't think that Seth Rollins is anything resembling a household name, despite being like one of the biggest names in WWE. So Cody Rhodes walks in the door as a top 10 guy in WWE, immediately in a top 5 guy if they present him as one.
I was going to ask you, inner circle. So it's Lesnar, Reigns. I think Seth Rollins is in there.
Drew McIntyre sort of floats around.
Drew McIntyre, just because they keep pushing the hell out of him.
Yeah, I mean, you can, and then immediately you start going to Bobby Lashley's. There's a lot of, obviously, Big E or the rest of. I mean, the New Day as a group is hugely valuable. Becky Lynch, Ronda Rousey. I don't know if you just said her. I mean, there's a lot of there are a lot of people who are sort of in that top tier.
So he's just in that mix.
Oh, he is immediately in that mix.
And the one they ruined, or they blew, I should say, is Kofi Kingston. Because I thought they had something with him, and
you could say the same thing about Big E. I mean, his partner. Yeah. It's they have, those guys have tons of upside and tons of fan support. And I don't think that WWE. I understand in some way why WWE hit the brakes on both of them, but it was whether or not, for whatever their reason was for doing it, it was an institutional failure to not harness the sort of support that they naturally have. I mean, they sell more shirts than anybody. They get a reaction that nobody else gets. You can't turn that into a main event run, like an ongoing main event level star. I mean, that's a problem.
It's a miss.